And here I am thinking that I am done with Triple P's for a while, but as you can tell, Triple P's never come to an end, which I'm very sure that my audience loves. So this got dropped in my lap via Discord, and shout out to Tawana for putting it in there. And I said, yep, this is a Triple P waiting to happen. Let me just be clear. I've never heard of the person that I'm talking about today, a day in my life. But apparently this person who goes by the name of El Funky, what a name, is a Puerto Rican rapper. I'm sorry, he's a Cuban rapper. And he is a staunch pro-Trump supporter. And now he is facing deportation in less than 30 days. As a matter of fact, he has an ultimatum. Either he gets deported back to Cuba or he goes to jail. So really, he has no option. He's going to be gone either way. So let's go ahead and get into this. In 2021, like many Cubans and Cuban Americans that summer, Florida Senator Marco Rubio was jamming to Patria y Vida, the Grammy-winning protest anthem that became a rallying cry for dissidents in Cuba. The hip-hop song, whose title translates to Homeland and Life, directly rebuked Fidel Castro's revolutionary slogan, Patria o Muerte, or Homeland or Death. That was a cause that resonated with Rubio, the son of Cuban exiles, so much that in 2023, he introduced the Patria y Vida Act, protecting against tyrants and expanding internet service in Cuba. Now, one of the song's central voices, Cuban rapper Alexier Marquez Duani, better known as El Funky, faces removal from the United States. Earlier this month, U.S. immigration authorities denied Marquez Duani's residency application under the 1966 Cuban Adjustment Act. He has less than 30 days to leave the U.S. or face deportation and likely imprisonment in Cuba, since his music helped fuel the largest anti-government protests in Cuba in decades. Despite El Funky's troubles, Rubio, now the Secretary of State, has remained silent. So have other influential Cuban American figures and politicians who had embraced the hashtag Cuba Libre cause, such as Florida Representatives Carlos Jimenez and Mario Diaz-Balart, who celebrated Marquez Duani and submitted the lyrics of Patria y Vida into the congressional record. Rubio, Jimenez, and Diaz did not respond to multiple requests for comment. So as you can see, they have left this dude high and dry, even after he gave them an theme. And they're like, look, you on your own. Even his own people aren't backing him up. That's a sad state of affairs. If there is widespread awareness about Marquez Duani's case, it hasn't yet manifested in action. His plea for help has circulated on social media, but protest petitions or high-profile interventions have yet to materialize, and at this point they probably won't because they don't care about him this much. Again, I've never heard of this dude a day in my life, so he must be popular amongst the Cuban community. And even then, it doesn't sound like, with the lack of people supporting him, it doesn't sound like they know much about him either. Even his Patria y Vida collaborators have stayed largely quiet. There you go. People he worked on the song with aren't saying anything. This guy must be persona non grata. The only elected official to offer help so far is Representative Maria Elvira Salazar. El Funky is a political refugee who deserves the full protection of U.S. immigration law. No, he doesn't, or no, he should not receive. She said in a statement after calls from Politico magazine, the first time she's spoken publicly about the situation. We are working with the USCIS, or the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, to ensure they understand the serious risk of torture and political persecution he faces if he returns to Cuba. On Thursday, Salazar's office said they were making headway with the rapper's case. Marquez Duani's plight is striking on several fronts. First, it's an illustration of how much Rubio has changed while serving under the Trump administration. Had the Cuban rapper received such a notice even a year ago, it's hard to imagine Rubio not speaking up. Second, the rapper's pending deportation is an example of how quickly President Donald Trump has shifted U.S.-Cuban immigration policy. For decades, the U.S. rolled out the red carpet for Cubans arriving in the United States, thanks to a legacy of Cold War policies that positioned the U.S. as a haven for those fleeing Castro's communist regime. Third, and perhaps the most striking, is Marquez Duani's attitude toward the president, whose policies pose a direct threat to his safety. Like the vast majority of Cubans living in the U.S., He fully supports Trump. He's quoted as saying, "If I could vote, I would have voted for Trump," he says. "He's the strongest president when it comes to Cuba." Marquez's journey from resistance icon to deportation case began in February 2021 when he and other artists released Patria y Vida, the song featuring rappers and musicians both on and off the island, denounced repression in Cuba and called for change. Two of its creators, Mikel Osorbo and Luis Manuel Otero Alcantara, are currently in prison in Cuba for their participation in the project and other protests, and it's looking like El Funky is about to be the next. Meanwhile, the song's banned status on the island only amplified its power. It became the de facto anthem of the unprecedented protests during the summer of 2021. By then, Marquez had already been under house arrest for months, kept from participating in the demonstrations by guards posted outside his home. When the Latin Grammy Awards sent him an invitation a few months later, Marquez knew it was likely his only chance to escape. As a customary, a Cuban government official escorted him to the airport. "What we want is for you to leave," he says the official told him. "Go, but don't come back because you're not welcome here." Once in Miami, Marquez married a Cuban American, found a maintenance job at a Christian school, and kept recording music. He applied to adjust his legal status under the CAA, which allows Cubans paroled in the US to claim permanent residency after 1 year. He assumed the law still stood firmly behind him, but the ground had already begun to shift. Trump's first term had chipped away at the CAA by limiting parole and resuming deportations to Cuba. Then Joe Biden's administration introduced a humanitarian parole program for those with US sponsors, but its reach was very narrow. Many arrivals, including Marquez, found themselves caught in bureaucratic limbo. After his residency application under the CAA was denied earlier this month, no reason was given. He hired a new immigration attorney and is now rushing to file an asylum claim. Side note, his new lawyer told him there were, quote, errors in the original application, but can't say exactly what they were. Under Trump 2.0, the White House has reimposed Cuba's state sponsor of terror designation, cracked down on remittances, sanctioned Cuba's medical missions abroad, and invoked the Libertad Act to expand lawsuits over confiscated properties, all things Marquez Duwani supports. And recently, the administration asked the Supreme Court to allow it to end humanitarian parole for more than 500,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans, which may make Marquez's case tougher to resolve. Despite everything, Marquez doesn't blame Trump. Of course he doesn't. He's not going to blame his let's put it this way. If Trump was abusing him, he's going to give him cover. "There are probably too many people here," he says. "I understand trying to get rid of those who shouldn't be here, but Trump should look at each individual case like mine." The attitude mirrors many in South Florida's Cuban exile community, where Cold War wounds and fears of socialism remain potent. Conservative Spanish language radio, including outlets like Radio Mambi, have long bolstered Trump and dismissed more inclusive immigration reform. For many Cuban Americans, the change in U.S.-Cuban immigration policy is, as they say, a real surprise, says Ana Sofia Palaez, executive director of the Miami Freedom Project, a Latino civic and education organization that deals with immigration, among other issues. "There's real disbelief that Cubans can be targeted. If forced back to the island, Marquez Duwani fears Cuba will play the part of benevolent host, only to arrest him later when the world isn't watching. Shoot, the world really isn't watching this, so I don't think it would really matter when if they do choose to arrest him." They make it seem like this guy is so freaking important. Again, I didn't even know who this dude was until less than 24 hours ago. Recently, he released a new rap song called Emigrante, a surprisingly soft and poignant track. The lyrics read, "I'm just one more immigrant who only wants to have a dream. I have faith I'm going to make it. I need strength and health to keep going." Notice I was getting ready to say keep booing, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. Boo at these lyrics and throw a tomato at it. He says, "I'm not going to shut up." He says, "In Cuba, everybody knows who I am." Yes, in Cuba, they know who you are, and even some of them don't like you. Otherwise, why aren't they trying to get you locked up over there? He says, "Going back puts my life in danger, but they know you over there." Okay, again, I don't feel bad. This goes right into the Latins for Trump bin. Like, I don't know how many stories have come out from the Latins for Trump clique, but it's like they're not getting it. I think I recently saw another person on YouTube talk about how this woman was married to some guy, and I believe he's an immigrant, and now he's about to be deported, but they were staunch Trump supporters. It's like, again, y'all heard deportation. I said that should have been a red flag right there for y'all. Did y'all really think that he was only talking about a particular group? No. And then look at who he's allowing to come over here now. Look at who he's importing. Those white South Africans under the alleged but really lie of there being a genocide over there. But he's sending all of you back. Like, did y'all not get that? Or did you think you was exempt? I don't feel nothing for this guy. Again, I didn't even know who this guy was. And now that I know who he is, I really could care less. Y'all let me know what you think about this down in the comments, and I will talk to you in the next one.